Hello, everyone. I'm David Harvey, and I'm the DC Post, SME DC Post First Vice President. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our Friday luncheon session featuring George O'Lear from Gannett Fleming, who's going to be talking about stacking the deck with modular construction. This is the First Friday series is provided to you through SAAME's commitment to offer the architect, engineering, and construction community effective training and development and networking programs. The SME DC Post is helping sustain the future of the profession with these monthly education-focused sessions to deliver topics that are relevant to our industry. So thank you for all joining us here today. So I see everyone's got their cameras off. We ask that people keep their cameras off and their mics muted. And of course, feel free to eat your lunch or breakfast or dinner if you're calling in from a different time zone. We're happy to be joining here today for this, regardless from where you're attending. So I think we have some slides. Maybe we could bring those up. We have, I'd like to first start off with a moment of silence for our active duty military, first responders, and all who are in need of our care and thoughts throughout the world right now. All right, thank you. And then I think we're going to go with our Pledge of Allegiance now. Hang on 1 second. Bree, are you showing some slides? Is there slides up? Oh, yeah, there. Okay. Yep.
We do have a Pledge Allegiance slide.
Yep. I think there's a slide. So anyways, I pledge allegiance to the flag for the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we get started, we'd like to take a moment to thank the DC Post sponsors for their support: AMT, Black & Veatch, Christopher Consultants, Consigli, Spinoli, Stantec, WSP, Jacobs, Woods Peacock, AB Facilities Services Solutions, and Arche Consulting. Thanks to all those sponsors for making this all possible. We couldn't do this event without you. All right, so if you're not already a DC Post sponsor and you'd like to support our Post with annual scholarships, we'd love to add your name to this list for future programs and events for this year. So please visit our website for more information about sponsorship levels and how you can give back to your community through the DC Post. All right, so now we're going to start off. This session is going to be providing one professional development hour from the SAME DC Post for those who would like to receive that. And those who would like to receive a credit for AIA credits, they'll need to send an email and your name and their 8-digit AIA number to Bree Beal. I think you have her contact information is there on this slide. All right, so I'd like to move on to introduce George here. Yeah, George is a senior program manager with Gannett Fleming's Architects Group. His design experience includes development of conceptual designs and follow-throughs during design development and construction. He's been involved in healthcare, institutional, commercial, residential, restaurant, entertainment, mass transit, telecommunications, and government projects. In addition to traditional construction projects, George has developed modular construction methodologies using steel and concrete to solve unique building design criteria, which can be built at cost competitive with conventional construction. George is a member of the Modular Building Institute, and a fun fact about George is that he's a volunteer for his local emergency squad. So George, thank you for joining us today, and now I'd like to turn the program over to you to start.
Great. Well, thank you for that great introduction, Captain Harvey. Appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for being able to join today and take some time out of your day on a Friday during the summer here, or beginning of summer, to join this conversation and learn a little bit about some of my views and some of the aspects and attributes of modular construction. Throughout my career, I've been involved with modular building and modular construction from different viewpoints. I've been on the contractor side, I've been on the designer side, I've been on the client side. So I've seen all the different parts and pieces and perspectives that are involved in modular construction in some way, and hope to be able to share those experiences and some of those items with you. Today I'll be presenting a brief overview of modular construction, a little bit about the history, really discussing the three key attributes to what I think would help determine if a modular construction project would be the right fit, and how to move forward in selecting and working with a modular builder. As you know, as architects and designers and builders, contractors, our main goal is always to provide value to our clients. Either, be it efficient floor plans, energy efficient mechanical equipment, or construction techniques. And sometimes our projects require that we provide a little bit more than just providing a building solution. It's really providing an entire packaged solution, or even a business solution for that matter. And that's where the different parts and pieces that I believe modular construction can certainly help add value. I'm not trying to present modular construction as being superior to conventional construction, but really just as another tool in construction that can help solve a unique design and construction challenges. Towards the end of the presentation, I'll highlight two different projects that are very unique and may not have been possible without the use of modular building techniques. So moving forward, the pandemic, recent history has really kind of put a spotlight on modular construction. I think we've seen a lot of these type of testing facilities and the need for healthcare facilities to be brought to light pretty quick. So we've seen these buildings kind of pop up. Probably seen this in the headlines too, right? How can a hospital be built in 14 days? Utilizing all pre-built, pre-manufactured components. Prior to the pandemic, this was one of the highlights. Is one of the tallest modular hotels in the world is being built in one of the toughest construction areas, New York City. Importing modules from Poland and then stacking them. Where's the value in that? Why is that happening? And then, of course, when you have major investors looking towards investing in a modular solution, it certainly brings a spotlight to what's happening in the construction industry with regard to modular construction. So when we talk about modular construction, what are we really talking about? We're talking about off-site construction. There's a lot of terms that have been used: permanent modular, temporary modular, factory-built structures, pods. Those are really like a bathroom type of unit. Hybrid. There's been projects that take a little bit parts and pieces of modular as well as put in conventional and prefab. For the purposes of this conversation, I'm going to use the term modular construction, but it may apply to all these different types of terms. What type of markets do we see happening in modular construction? Multifamily, mid-rise, single-family residential, of course. We have the ubiquitous travel or temporary office project support. These are those bathroom parts I was talking about earlier. Man camps. And then, of course, commercial, healthcare institution, transportation infrastructure. And you'll see one of the slides towards the end, of course, to be institution and federal type projects. A little bit about the history. So, there's been a lot of buzz recently. People seem to think that modular construction is a new modern technique, but really we could trace it all the way back to the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, where we had all these factories coming online, and the factory workers needed a very informal, very quick place to get something to eat. And that brought to rise of these, kind of mobile eateries, and which then kind of morphed into our modern day diner, which again, as time went through and the interstate system of the United States picked up, weary travelers needed some place to stop and get a bite to eat. So they transformed those carts, those horse-drawn carriages into places where you could stop along the roadside America and pick up. And that's what kind of evolved into these shiny neon type 24-hour places to stop and rest and get a bite to eat during your travels. in addition to that, one of the back in the fall of 1942, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers started beginning to acquire vast tracts of land in 3 areas of the states. These places were known as Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Los Alamos, New Mexico, and Hanford, Richland, Washington. And these 3 areas were known for helping to develop the Manhattan Project and to support all the workers, all the scientists, and all the support staff needed to produce and create that effort. And this was done in about 2.5 years. And this was, again, back in 1945. None of those places would have been able to ramp up and get online quickly and really affect history if it wasn't for modular construction. 1967, World Expo, Wash Sadaf experimented with modular housing using pre-manufactured concrete. Created about 354 identical prefabricated units. And it was somewhat of a successful exploration of modular housing. However, it was so popular that the value skyrocketed and it economically really didn't turn out to be the best use. But again, as in the mid 60s, architects were experimenting with this type of construction. Disney theme parks. Disney has used a lot of different modular techniques extensively throughout the creation of their parks. And over 30 years ago, there were modular manufacturers who were building multi-story, multi-campus sized projects. So again, modular construction isn't necessarily a new technique or new technology. It's been around. It's just been continually improved over time. The industry has been adapting it. The AIA provides a guide on modular construction. Clemson University offers classes that you can take on modular construction. So, and again, I'm sure everyone on the phone call here has heard about it, has been experienced it, has somewhat been affected by it. Modular construction has, and as seeing the popularity kind of grow in this market, in our industry, and it's starting to really take off here and be good. So what do I believe the 3 values or the values of modular construction? So if you have a project that has a time component, has a technology component, or has a financing component, those are probably the 3 biggest items or value that using a modular-based project would help. And these are, I'll talk a little bit more about these. So time, the biggest time is that the buildings can, you're providing your client with a solution months ahead of schedule. For projects that are revenue intensive businesses, the results can be significant. Great example of that is the cellular phone industry. When you had, at the time it was AT&T, Sprint, and I forget who the other player was, but obviously the first people to get up site, get their towers and get their cell units up and running as quickly as possible, that's where they gain the market. Other advantages, the reduced site disturbance at busy sites. Again, if you have a time component, you're reducing that site disturbance, and that can be very beneficial, especially in an urban site where there's a lot of other activities happening. And then bringing new business to the market ahead of competition. Again, I use the cell phone industry as that example. So as a designer, where could we bring value by using modular design? The best part, or I should say the best area where it would be advantageous to introduce modular design is right in the preliminary stages. And I'll talk a little bit more about that on some further slides about why this is important. But traditionally or typically, a modular design is really kind of brought in after the bid because there's the thought that modular design might be a little cheaper. or more cost effective, which may not necessarily be the case. But if you're looking to accelerate or provide your clients with an accelerated schedule, um, right after the preliminary design would be the best time to do that. And here's a schedule that compares the modular to accelerated to conventional construction. This is for a healthcare facility that was done. And the biggest component here is the fact that site construction can begin almost parallel to the modular factory construction component. You're basically having two construction activities happening at the same time, which significantly can reduce time. In some instances, the construction permit may even be able to also be reduced because, and again, I'll talk about this on further slides, with modular buildings, there's usually a bifurcated approach with the permitting applications and the permitting process. And sometimes, depending upon when you're building there, you can find significant advantages to that. So when you take this example and couple it with conventional construction, they're seeing almost a reduction in a little bit more than half of your schedule. Technology. There's a lot of different building types and approaches that may benefit from modular construction. Sometimes factory construction may offer superior solutions over local or regional resources, especially if you're building in remote parts of the world where you may not have materials available to you or the local workers to put that project together. And one of the bigger, more important items is the relocatability. Some modular buildings, if they're designed and planned accordingly, the ability to be relocated offers clients with a lot of business flexibility. I've seen clients that have wanted to test markets and not wanted to create a permanent solution in one place. So they developed a project that could be moved and test different markets. And then depending upon the outcome, they would expand or further their offerings. Financing, and this could be a presentation on its own, but again, I'm providing a brief overview here. So modular buildings can be treated as personalty instead of real property, creating accelerated depreciation opportunities. And that has, depending upon if your client has available capital or has capital issues, this is something that may be very valuable to them. Normally, or modular buildings can be leased, it can be owned, or they can be even purchased after the lease, much like a typical parallel to leasing a car. Finance solutions are enhanced with recoverable and relocatable asset. I talked about the relocatable ability on the previous slide, but they can be recoverable. And then, of course, operational leases offer off-the-balance sheet rentals, which again may help a client who needs a project done, but again does not have the capital. Modular solution may be an opportunity to get their project underway. This is a great slide I like to bring up. Again, as builders and designers and constructors, our clients don't come to us for a building, they come to us for a solution. And Theodore Levitt, who is a Harvard professor at Harvard Business School, people are interested in the hole. They're not interested in buying a drill, but we don't go to Home Depot to buy a drill, right? Or a drill bit. We need those tools to solve a solution, to provide a hole. So again, as constructors, as builders, as designers, we're really trying to provide a solution to our clients. And solutions that may be innovative, creative, that are above and beyond what our clients may be expected. And again, using that modular approach, given if their client has some of these different aspects, may be beneficial and may help become almost the standard for that client. In order to promote that, like any other project, you want to invest in your client, create concepts, begin to identify the environment, kind of be the proponent for selling modular construction, show them the benefits, kind of bring them up to speed and be a champion for that. So you have a client, it seems 2 or 3 of the previous items that kind of qualify the modular building fit. There's a time component and a financial component that the client's interested in. They said, okay, go ahead, start moving forward with the modular solution. We want to really learn more. So as architects, designers, constructors, we start looking into the modular industry and seeing what kind of solutions are available. The biggest question that I could offer, that I would advise, is when you're looking into the modular solution and you start contacting different suppliers, manufacturers, dealers, are they selling a service or are they selling a product? Within the modular industry, there's dealers, there's manufacturers, there's contractors, there's design builders, and each one of them offers a different part or piece. And it's really helpful to know exactly what they're going to do. Do they just provide the boxes from the factory? Do they also do the setup on site? Do they do the site development and foundations? And so as you're going through and you're evaluating your strategy, these are some questions to ask. Because again, the industry has grown so much recently that there are different parts and pieces that you'll find, and you want to know what you have to prepare for, what you have to plan for, what you may have to document, what's going to affect the outcome of this project. Do they also sell equipment? Do they also do design services? Do they also provide the financing? So again, there are people that will provide full turnkey services. There are also people who will just do the box and say, here you go. It's up to you or your contractor or your architect to figure out, how to do the site, how to make it work. So how do you compare companies and solutions? Much like you would any other product, right? Scope comparison. You're going to take both scopes, you're going to do side by side, you're going to evaluate it with your team, see who's providing what and what's going to provide the best solution. Of course, cost comparison always plays a big part, depending upon what your outcome is and where your budget falls. Sometimes modular construction is not necessarily the best solution, especially economically. A lot of people seem to think that, at least in my experience, that modular construction is cheaper than standard construction. And that's not necessarily true. There's other aspects that, and I'll get into in a little bit, that may affect that cost. History of performance is extremely important, especially in the modular building industry. If you're looking to do a 3-story commercial type building, perhaps the guy that's building the construction trailers, he says he can do it, but he may not be able to. So certainly look into resources, see what projects they've done. Again, this parallels conventional construction, looking at the history of performance, looking at client resources and past customers and getting their take about what they were able to provide and how that building turned out. Of course, quality of product, right? We've got 2 green cars, 4 wheels. They both have 4 wheels. They both have glass windshields. They're both green. They're both cars. The one on the right is probably one of the best-selling cars in the United States, and the one on the left has a history of catastrophic failure. But they're both the same. They're both cars, right? So definitely look into the quality of the product and see what they're offering. See what your contacts are offering. One thing I do want to mention, so the modular industry has struggled to communicate with architects and clients. And the manufacturer's complaint is that architects don't know how to design for modular. And this also goes for, or also holds true for engineers, contractors, anyone who's related, it's always seems to be there's always seemed to be a struggle how to get the two to communicate. And one of the best things to do right off the bat when I had that schedule up earlier about when to bring in modular construction is right after that preliminary design, because at that point would be to have those conversations with the manufacturers and bring them into the design process. Because even though you might find 2 or 3 manufacturers that are building or can provide the same solution, they may have vastly different ways of providing that structure, and how they build it in the factory, and what materials they have available and how they put those materials together. So, and of course, they're going to offer a lot of advice to an architect of how they build, what they want to build, how spaces could be laid out so that you don't have modular mate lines crossing through or columns falling right into the middle of a room, because there's a little bit of a difference in coordination of how that works. And I'll talk about that in a few slides here. So as a design professional, again, it's been my experience, even when I was on the contractor side, that, contractors look to modular construction as a fabricated part rather than a partner in the design process. And this kind of ties back to what I was just talking about, is that, you definitely want to have an integrated team that has started right from the beginning that can help, bring all those values of the time and the technology and the financing and create a cohesive project. So some little bit more specifics about modular construction and creating specifications and thinking about different parts and pieces that go into this from a very high standpoint or from a very high view. Bidding the project versus sole source has always been one important topic right off the bat, and then that may even determine whether or not a modular solution is really the best solution, because like with any commodity, if you're going to go with the lowest price, it may not be the best product, especially if it's through the bidding process. Again, I spoke about this. Involve the modular manufacturer from the beginning, right? If possible. Sometimes it may not be possible during the design, in which case, if you think you have a project that may lend itself to a modular solution, look for a professional.
So where do we leave off? Details, coordination, connection, systems, and scope. There are 2 or 3 other layers of coordination that will be needed if you determine or if you decide to go with a modular construction solution. There's going to be mate lines, there's going to be mechanical coordination, other elements that will have to be discussed and coordinated. So there will be a little bit of extra time and effort that's involved with that. Materials and detailing, shipping, modular buildings, they need to be transported, and you need to think about the forces that are involved during transportation, the materials that are used to make sure they withstand transportation, and that may affect your approach. And then, of course, your installer qualifications and licensed professionals. Your building may be located in Florida, but the project may be getting built in Indiana, and so you need to make sure that that process or that building is going to be able to meet all the Florida construction codes, as well as the professionals who are putting the building together. Plan review and inspections. A lot of states do now have a modular program. Sometimes that's offered through a third-party agency, or sometimes it does have to go through the state. Depending upon the state's programs, there may be a time component to that. So that's something you need to know right in the beginning when you're planning your project. Make sure you allow for the time that a state would take versus the time that a third party may be able to quickly review the project. Local AHJs. Obviously, the building is going to be sitting down on a site. Certainly need to have the local AHJ buy-in. What I've done in the past is right from the beginning, have a meeting with the authority having jurisdiction, as well as all the stakeholders, and make sure that everyone's on board with the plan review process, with the construction process, what review and inspections are going to be required, and how that may affect your project, including third-party review. And then finally, you want to move it where? If there's if you're thinking about a modular solution, and it ties back to what I was talking about earlier about testing different markets, moving modular buildings from one state to another, you may have different requirements. Obviously, different parts of the country have different building requirements and code requirements, and it's something to consider when you're originally thinking about the concept of your project and how that may affect it. May also affect the size of your project. When we start looking at different routes of how to move a building across country, having less parts and pieces and bigger modules may be more effective than having a lot of smaller modules. However, there are shipping restraints, so you have to evaluate that. And again, that's where the bringing in the value of the modular builder from day one and what they provide really can affect your project, and things to think about when you're looking at a modular building project. There are also sustainability benefits. There's some reduction of waste, indoor air quality. Building is built in a controlled environment. We talked about reduced site disturbance, and then the manufactured process versus site construction. Some processes may lend themselves, if you have high tolerances, some processes may lend themselves to be better off done in a controlled atmosphere. However, there may be some cons, as I talked, the location and the manufacturer versus the site, travel distances. There's been a lot of discussion and debate about, I build a building in one place, but if I'm traveling more than 500 miles, is that really sustainable? And, how that is evaluated from project to project. And same thing with local resources. It depends upon how you look at local resources and what's used from a sustainability standpoint versus having something built off-site, and if what they use is considered local resources. So this is a really high overview, but again, I could probably do a whole presentation on sustainability and modular construction and the pros and cons and how it may or may not be beneficial. But again, just trying to provide a brief overview for everyone involved. So the first project that I'm going to highlight that may not have been possible due to modular construction is a modular embassy in Tajikistan. This project was really born out of, I think everyone knows about the bugging of the Russian embassies and security concerns that were created. So a modular building company at the time had an idea that, well, we can really solve a lot of this if we perform some of these processes off-site and bring the building to the site. We can build the building in a controlled environment with all the security concerns in place, and provide that as a value. There was also a time component to this project. This project did need to get up and running very quickly, and having a modular building approach when compared to conventional construction on site, there was value there. And the same thing with local resources and materials. There really wasn't that skilled workforce available at the time that could provide this type of project. This project actually consisted of four modular buildings, I should say, was the concept building itself, the two Marine Guard, or I should say the two controlled access points, and as well as the Marine Guard quarters, all modular buildings that were built off-site and transported and moved to the site. Again, we started right from beginning, right from day one. We approached this project, wanted to integrate our client, wanted to show them what was the possibility, wanted to engage them and sell the process to the client through different forms of architecture and drawing and get them engaged. This building benefited significantly from the use of modular construction. So some of you may be aware of the standard embassy design. This project was based upon that concept, and it lended itself very well to modularity based upon the 3 by 9 meter grid that was part of that initial standard embassy design by the State Department. These modules were 3 by 3 by 9. and afforded us to break that plan down into multiple parts and pieces. The plan itself was about, or I should say each module was 9 meters, in which case you'd have a cluster of 4 columns. We did have intermediate columns that were spaced, but again, since the modular builder was involved right from the beginning, there was a lot of discussion about where those placement of columns can occur. We did have to maintain this mate line between the modules at certain intervals, but some of these internal columns, since, for example, this was a conference room, we were able to offset these and still make room for furniture and some other components. As you get a little bit further down the plan, you can see some of the column points were moved to accommodate different building features. In addition to that, the modularity of the building did provide structural redundancy in the event that there was some type of issue. Instead of having a beam that goes 20, 30 feet and columns that were spaced wider, if there was a failure, or if there was an event that compromised this module on the end, you did have a redundant structural system in place. So one of the reasons why this was achievable and able to be modular was typically a lot of the forced entry requirements, ballistic requirements, were traditionally done with concrete, different thicknesses and things. And the modular builder came up with a unique solution of using a combination of steel plate and steel tube systems, which adhered to all the State Department guidelines with regard to security and blast resistance, and provided the ability to make this a modular building and be built in the United States and then shipped overseas. Again, there was different, you can see the modular components where some of these columns were located here. Just kind of go through here. So again, due to the nature of the modules and tying back to some of the topics I talked about earlier with regard to shipping, it was decided that the best way to do it was to ship the modules probably about 80% complete, but again, have the exterior cladding be done on site. This was a combination of stone panels as well as metal panels. And again, the stone panels coupled with the modularity of the building really created a very achievable and constructible solution to the exterior that could be done on site. These panels were manufactured again in the United States and then brought over to the site and applied there. And this was done a couple of times. There was at least four different embassies that were constructed in this way using this technology because of time, resource, and available materials. For some of the processes or for some of the modules, we did use the Antonov, which up until recently was, it was quite an experience seeing loading these modules in here and flying them. A lot of the secure modules were done this way in order to make sure that we could, again, comply with all the security concerns. So the next project I want to highlight here is utilizing modular construction is within the healthcare market, specifically with cancer treatment. What's on the screen here now is something called linear accelerator. It's used to deliver high doses of radiation to patients undergoing cancer treatment. And traditionally, these buildings or these vaults, they actually call them vaults, are built with concrete and steel. Tons of rebar, tons of concrete. It takes a long time to form up, to pour, to do the rebar. This project, obviously, this is not relocatable or movable by any means, and the client is kind of left with what we used to call a concrete legacy in place here. It takes months to build one of these vaults, and then if you have a multiple vault situation, it just literally doubles the time. So you can, again, get a sense of really what the structure is involved here. And so the reason why concrete is really used for these types of structures is the fact that concrete does two things. It provides a structural envelope for for the building, but more importantly, it provides the shielding that's required due to the doses of high radiation that are generated by that equipment. So concrete really provides two things: structure as well as the shielding that's required. So a company came up with an idea to make this a modular solution, looking at it from the fact that again, there's a time component that's involved with the building of these vaults. Sometimes there is that financial component, and then there's the thought of being able to move this, to move the vault. If there's a healthcare client that wants to test other markets, they have the ability to pick this up and move it and explore different options, business models. And of course, there's the financing. The fact that it is a modular building, it's actually treated as a piece of equipment, and it can be financed as such. And the way that the company went about innovating this is they decoupled the shielding component from the structural component. So utilizing a steel box, like a steel vessel, more or less, they would fill the void, this void, and that's kind of shown in conventional construction, with material that would provide that high density shielding that's required. It was flowable. It's almost kind of like a sand, which will enable them to pump it in pretty quickly, get the building up and running on site. And if the client ever did want to move it, they could literally come in here and vacuum out the shielding, unbolt the modules, and move it to another site. This vault construction takes a matter of hours. Can put a vault up in about a day as compared to 4 months. So therefore, you can see the time advantage of bringing treatments to site, of getting patients treated quicker, the economic advantage, and then of course in different healthcare markets, getting ahead of your competition. So this building here was Moore's facility. This is in San Diego, California. The existing facility was a brand new facility. 3 years after it was constructed, it was already over capacity. So they had the need to add 2 new linear accelerators to this site to offer additional treatment. This entire facility was modular, not only the vault, but also the rest of the building. And this was a true turnkey solution. The dealer who provided this solution was able to provide the vault solution as well as space for the rest of the clinical operations, such as other imaging, exam rooms, nurse station, waiting areas. So here again is the foundation is in place, and while this foundation was being placed, those modular units were being manufactured off sites, significantly saving time. One of the big aspects was the time component. Any work that was going to be done on the site, the hospital estimated it probably would have taken about 3 years to get the funding done, to get the approvals, to go through regents, and get all the approvals needed to do this on site, or to do this project. Taking a modular approach, they were able to cut that schedule in half, if not less than half, because they were able to use the unique financing available to them to do an off-balance sheet approach and treat the building as equipment, and therefore they were able to kind of bypass all that parts and planning. In addition to that was, again, the time on site versus the time in the factory of building simultaneously. So here's some pictures of the modules actually being set. The clinical portion was set in about 2 days. So 2 days worth of work, had a building that was about 70 to 80% complete on site. Some examples of that modular solution for the vault. Again, these areas here are the areas that are filled with that aggregate that could be flowable and pumped out. And then there was some high density shielding beyond that. The other component of this was the technology that was used. In addition to being able to provide a modular solution, the manufacturer at the time also provided these what they called hatches, and that enabled the equipment movers to move the equipment in and out without having to jackhammer concrete, having to remove a base frame, having to disrupt the inside of the rest of the facility. So when we start talking about technology and how that's integrated into modular construction, there were many attributes that were afforded by using this construction, and that added a lot of value to the client. The building was clad in a stone panel, which again, kind of, as I discussed earlier, as you start selecting materials and parts and pieces that actually qualify the building to be a modular component, this is one of those decisions and details that need to be thought of in order to have the building comply to be considered modular and a piece of equipment with regard to financing solutions. And so walking into this building, the modular builder provided everything with the exception of the furniture. And again, tying this back to what I was talking about earlier, is what is your dealer providing you with? Are they just delivering boxes? What are they going to be doing for you? And everything here, again, with the exception of furniture, was provided and done by the modular manufacturer and dealer. And looking at this, it's very hard to tell that it's a modular building at all. The one area where it was expressed was down this hallway, and some other areas where some of the columns were exposed. But again, it was treated more of as a design element and an accent rather than something that had to be there because of the method of construction. And again, this is the exterior. The curtain wall was done. Parts of the curtain wall were done in the factory. This parapet portion had to be done on site, but again, in order to create the massing, in order to create a great architectural solution, have it blend seamlessly with the existing building in the background, it was able to be achieved using modular construction. They took that concept and even made it a more temporary solution. This building here can be up and running and treating patients in 2 weeks, and this building was really meant to be a temporary solution. So if there's a client that does have a permanent concrete vault and they want to do an equipment upgrade, sometimes they cannot afford to be down for 6-8 months while that's happening. It makes sense for them to come put this up in a parking lot or an adjacent piece of land, transfer their patients over to this building, treat their patients, so they don't lose their revenue, they don't lose their patient flow, they don't lose their staff based upon any time. And again, that wouldn't have been possible without the use of modular construction. Technology, some very unique foundations were developed to accommodate that. This foundation was designed so it can remain in the ground and be covered up very easily. So in the future, if they wanted to bring the building back, they can reclaim the foundation and still use it and maintain some of that investment that was done. So with that, yeah, I'm pushing up here to 10-1. I'm going to turn this back over to Captain Harvey for some closing comments. And on behalf of myself and Gannett Fleming, thank you for attending today. And yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions after Captain Harvey is done going.
Yeah, we can go right into that now, George, if you'd like to. If there's any questions, people could unmute themselves or they could put them in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat here. I don't see any questions right now, but are there any, if you'd like to ask a question, you can unmute yourself. All right, well, while you're thinking of those questions, maybe we can move on today. But thanks, George, for today's session. I really appreciated the history that you provided earlier on about the modular construction. And we've also been thinking about modular construction here ourselves because we're going to have to be putting some staff in some remote areas, and we might need to be thinking of quickly getting some spaces for them to be able to live in while they're doing their work there. So it's a timely presentation for me. So before we wrap things up for today, maybe we could move to the next slide, George. I'm going to show some, again, thank our sponsors here today. And then the next slide is move to the next one here. Yeah, our next first Friday session, Hunts Zollers will be presenting on using digital twin technology to go beyond replacing like for like. So it's a little intriguing presentation, as you'll come to see more next Friday. The next first Friday is on July 1st. And if you'd like to present during one of these sessions, feel free. We've got spots open in September. And so if you'd like to do that, you can email. The email information is at the DC Post website, and you can find it there. So we're going to be having another conference coming up here. The next slide, you'll see it's going to be on June 23rd at the Army Navy Club in downtown DC. Major construction programs, trends, strategies, and opportunities. ACEC and CMAA will be doing a joint conference there. There'll be 3 PDH hours. There is a fee for that one since it's at the Army Navy Club, but please feel free to get and register right now. We're having high demand for that program, and so don't want to have to be placed on a wait list or have to buy your tickets off StubHub or something like that. All right, the next event we'd like to bring your attention here's kind of a series of events we've got coming up. Lots of things that the Post has plans, lots of activities to get out and about. There's a event at Topgolf on July 21st. We're going to be at the Joint Base Andrews Air Show, September 16th through the 19th. There'll be a federal luncheon program up in September, innovations in 5G networks, and then a golf tournament on October 5th. And we've got more stuff planned for late October, November, and December as well. So plenty of time to get come together and visit and interact with each other, both online and in person. And let's see, I think that's it. To move to the next slide, I think again, yeah, that's it today. So I don't know if there's any questions for George before we sign off today.
Looks like we got a couple questions that came in. David Clark asks, does DoD criteria limit modular construction? And David, if you want to unmute yourself and ask, you're welcome to.
Yeah, this is David. The reason I asked the question, we're looking at modular construction opportunities for some of our healthcare facilities, and I appreciate the example that you had there. But working with DoD, we have a suite of unified facility criteria. So are those, have you run into any problems with complying with unified facility criteria in any of your DoD projects? Over.
We haven't, in the ones that I've been exposed to, we didn't have any issues complying with the criteria, but we did have some concerns with the contracting portion of it. So when you start looking at how that's approached, there are different ways to go through the contracting, not only for the design services, but for the construction services. And there are different ways that could be negotiated. So as far as the technical aspects of modular construction, no, we didn't have any issues meeting that. It was more of an administrative kind of thing that had to be dealt with.
Okay, thank you.
Got another question here from me. If there are last minute design changes, how does that affect the schedule? And how can you share that with the team so that everybody's on the same page, making good decisions to keep the project on time?
Sure. So like any project, if a design change happens at the 11th hour, yeah, there certainly would be or could be the potential for schedule impact. However, the fact that some of these projects could be built in a controlled environment with multiple shifts, it may help mitigate that extent and as well as that impact, and as well as being able to address any kind of design changes or constructability. It may actually may be as simple as adding on another module, right? Depending upon what change is needed. So as long as it complies with the rest of the project, and how to address that.
Thank you. And then Mike O'Neill, you had a question. You're curious if federal wage scales applies to off-site fabrication.
Yeah, that kind of ties into the first question with regard to the administrative process. And from what I've been exposed to, yeah, the federal wage does apply to off-site fabrication, but it kind of really depends upon the contracting officer and how they approach that with the project specifics. So there are ways to work through that, but again, that's actually starting to become a very hot topic in modular construction of how that works. And even if the federal wage scale applies to construction within the factory. So again, it's something that the modular industry is actively working on and lobbying and kind of getting involved in how to address that specifically.
Hey, thanks. It looks like we have one other question. Feel free to add some more questions in there, folks. We've got just a few more moments left in our program. But Captain Ward Doss says, are there any governing organizations that can help find the right modular construction contractor?
Sure, I'd be happy to help you with that personally, but as far as the organizations, first place to start would be the Modular Building Institute, MBI. They're the industry industry champion. They have fantastic resources and can provide a lot of guidance when it comes to finding the right modular fabricator, dealer, site components, or site contractors. So that would be the best starting point, would be the MBI.
Great, thank you. All right, last call for questions. Looks like we've got all our questions in.
That's great. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending today. And I think later on today, the Eventbrite will pop out your PDH certificate. And this, in case you like to go back and listen to the wise words of George, that this will be posted on our website, and you'll be able to hear that later, then probably next week. And again, if you're an AIA member and you'd like to get that certificate, you need to send your number to Bree at the email. So great. All right. Well, if there's nothing more, thanks, George. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.